There is power in personal stories. It connects us, it empowers us, and it holds us accountable. It creates understanding and expands our perspective. This is Big in the Community with Jonathan James at the Kalamazoo Promise, a podcast aimed to highlight local leaders, collaborators, and innovators in the greater Kalamazoo community. All right, welcome again to Big in the Community. I'm going to start us off with a quote. The greatness of community, or of a community, is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. And that's Coretta Scott King. Just wanted to say that since it was just the 60th anniversary of Dr. King giving his walk, or taking the walk, and his speech. But today, we're bringing in a big shot in the community, Miss Maddy Day of Maddy Day, LLC and Associates. So I'll let you introduce yourself, tell us a little bit of your story, however far back you want to go. I'll just let you, and then I'll jump in if we want to find out some more.
Yeah, perfect. Hi, everybody. So great to be with you. Big shot. I don't know if that's true, but very grateful to be a part of the Kalamazoo community. I came here a little over 11 years, which is wild how time, flies so quickly. And I actually came as to direct and develop an initiative, a statewide initiative called Fostering Success Michigan, that was originally housed out of Western Michigan University. And so if you're familiar with the CETA Scholars Program, I would always say it's a sister program to the CETA Scholars Program. And really the aim of Fostering Success Michigan, because it does continue on, is really to build education pathways for young people that have experienced foster care. So through high school completion into post-secondary credentials and into careers. So I came out here, I grew up in the Northwest, the Seattle area, and really had no idea about Michigan, no idea about Kalamazoo, visited one time before I interviewed, and have loved it and have made it my home. And my husband and I live with our two retired racer greyhounds in Texas Corners, and just really love being a part of a community that I would say in a lot of ways is so values aligned. I don't know that that's something that maybe I initially thought about when I moved here. I was really excited about opportunity. What I learned in a short time while I was interviewing and exploring the opportunity to come here was just sort of the richness of resources within Kalamazoo. Yeah. And as we made the decision to stay and build our lives and build our family here, a huge part of it was that this community is very aligned with how we want to work, who we want to be, and I think just the groundedness in this interconnection of community and education and service. So that's a little bit about how I started.
Yeah. I
can share a little bit about what I do now, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, jump right in. Jump right in.
It's funny because I'm often on the interviewing end of things with
my work. Whenever you have to pivot to the other side, like the first episode I did of this, I was like, whoa, this is there's pressure.
Yeah.
I feel if something goes wrong, it's on me. But then I just blame the producer. But I can't blame the producer because he doesn't do anything wrong. He's amazing. So
he's great. He's making us look good, sound good. I love it. Yeah. After working at Western and leading Fostering Success Michigan for 6 years, I made the pivot into consulting and started consulting with the Annie E. Casey Foundation, which is based in Baltimore, and their Jim Casey Youth Opportunities Initiative. So again, continuing to focus on child welfare, education, and really young people who are aging out of child welfare and into adulthood. And so just that has always been central even before my work at Western, central to my work, central to my passion, and really my calling. From there, I ended up starting my own consulting firm in 2021. And so we just hit our 2-year anniversary, and we do systems change consulting kind of more broadly across both education and child welfare. So I still work with the Annie Casey Foundation, and I work with several other foundations, organizations, and then, that has allowed me to really, in my free time, reinvest back in the community. Hustling, but not hustling so hard that I don't have time to, spend time in the community, both in Kalamazoo, but also in the state of Michigan. So I serve as the chair for the Kalamazoo DHHS board, and have served in that role for, I think, about 9 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm just really proud of the work that happens through that office, and every staff person there, I think, is amazing and so dedicated, and just really honored to be able to serve in the role as chair. And then I serve as vice chair with the Michigan Education Trust, so as a governor's appointee there. And really, that's a broader, more expanded role, but often I think about, for young people who across the state of Michigan who don't have the opportunity like young people here in Kalamazoo have to have the promise, what other financial opportunity can we make possible for them to really reach and achieve their post-secondary credential goals? And then finally, I work as or serve as a board member, former chair for the Michigan College Access Network, which really, again, kind of grounds and sort of brings together the variety of populations that I really hold dear, and really thinking about how, from a policy lens, from a community engagement lens, how do we create those college pathway opportunities?
Wow. So, as people say, multiple hats.
Yes.
You have multiple hats in all kinds of different areas. That's really amazing. I appreciate the work that you do. And then, like you said, that connection of how do we also, like, we already have the promise. What else is it that we need to assist the students to be successful?
Yeah.
Because the promise is amazing, but it doesn't fix everything.
Right.
And that's the whole point of the podcast, the whole point of the work that I do, and then all the other people here is how do we find those other things? How do we cover those other areas? How do we fill those gaps? So appreciate that. Thank you for being a partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the other pieces that I do in service in our local Kalamazoo community is working with the YWCA's policy board committee, and working on their Improving the Lives of Children subcommittee. And, I think people, like you said, they often think that, the pathway to education is go to school, get decent grades, keep going,
right,
you'll get in.
That's it.
But it's like, oh no, there is so much. And right now, we've been really focused as we start this new school year on school safety and what that means for student safety, and really thinking about, like, kids don't want to go to school if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel welcomed. How do they feel like they belong, right, if they don't feel safe at school? And so that's something that I really, I think a lot about. And I think, we have to be cognizant of the experiences that our students are having in the community, in their school community, and what that means for their ability to see beyond just get through this grade, but to what they can become.
Yeah. I think a lot of times we just focus on, like, the right now, but, like, we're sitting here like, oh, this is waiting for you.
Yeah.
As soon as you get through education, your K through 12 education, which is not an easy thing. It's you just can't expect every student just be like, oh, you got this, just go to school, then you got that promise waiting for you, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
There's so many other things in life that come along that complicate things, but not everyone knows that. A lot of people have the mindset of, like, you got the promise, why don't you got it, you just go. Like, if I had that, like, there, you get that kind of mindset of, I was able to work it out and you also have this.
Yeah.
So why aren't you using it? But if you dive deep enough into it, you start to see all these other reasons of support that students need or families need.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many things. Like, we could sit here and talk for like an hour about like, okay, let's address this problem.
Yeah.
Okay, we got this covered. We got like housing covered. Now we need to cover like all basic needs.
Yeah.
Then we need to cover, do you have the support? Do you have the mental health stability to be in post-secondary school?
Yeah.
Because that's one of the biggest pressures. As soon as you leave, that's like the first time you're away from your parents.
Yeah.
And you're out on your own.
Yeah.
Also, did you have support before?
Yeah.
And now you're in a completely different space and situation. How are you going to manage that? Do you know the people there? Who do you talk to there? And it's a lot of those things that you don't think about until you're already there.
Yeah.
And then it's like, you fail your first semester. It's like, something goes wrong. And now you got to kind of recover from that.
Yeah.
Rather than be already supported and ready to go.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, okay. So I think, what about like K through 12 for you? What was that like?
My own K through 12 journey?
Yeah.
Oh, that was interesting. So, there's a couple things. My parents moved every 2 years.
Okay.
And part of that was them trying to, move up in their station of life and sort of trying to get us into a better house, better schools, better communities. And I think on the one hand, it made me very adaptable. So, there's that. On the other hand, it was really hard to feel grounded and, knowing, okay, every 2 years, new friends, new, group of people to get to know, and figuring out the culture of the school. And, through my elementary through middle school years, it felt like, okay, here we go again, and I did well in school. And so I think school always felt safe for me. It felt like a place where I got a lot out of it, but there was this, I didn't always know my place and I didn't always know my people. And so that really shifted when I went into high school. And even though we moved halfway through my first year of high school, I stayed in the same school, and I stayed in the same school for all 4 years. Yeah. And it was really then where I was able to, kind of dig into the other aspects, like what might I want to try? Do I want to do theater? So I did theater for a while. I knew I wasn't a musician, but I was a singer, so I sang, I did debate. I took AP classes, and I could kind of explore because I felt like I had a really solid footing in what was available for me there. The school that I went to, it's in the northern suburbs, just north of Seattle. There was a lot of students who were children of recent immigrant families, both from various Asian countries and also Eastern European countries. It was definitely like a working class community. And I think that I was fortunate to have some teachers that really sort of saw, okay, there's something about you that we might want to invest in. And so I think about some of those teachers. I had an English teacher in particular, Miss Antonelli, and I remember, she was relentless about, sort of try harder, do better. And I think about how I remember going, oh my gosh, it's like I can never win for this lady. Like, I'm never going to get an A in this class, and it's so hard. And, eventually I did, but she didn't let up. But I think now looking back, I'm like, she saw that, that push was good for me.
What you could really do.
Yeah, what I could really do. And I think I was fortunate to have, like I said, a couple teachers who really saw that and really encouraged me to push further. And, because of that, I was fortunate to be able to get a scholarship and, that paid for my undergrad, schooling at the University of Washington. But, I also recognize that there's probably a lot of students that I went to school with, even some of my friends who I'm still friends with to this day, that didn't get those opportunities because it was a school that probably needed more resources than were available, and there was only so many students that those teachers had time to invest in, right? And so I count myself as fortunate, and also think about maybe where's the equity in some of this, you know?
Were the students that needed more help, were they getting the help that they needed the whole time?
Yeah.
And that's tough because, you know, there's only so many teachers, and they can only pour in, also giving more of themselves, you know, going above and beyond before you start to get burnout, you know, that's tough because you want, I think, you know, I wasn't ever a teacher, but, everyone that I come across, I wish I could help them as much as I could.
Yeah.
But there's still limits on that.
Yeah.
You know, I have my family, I have my job that I first have to do my job. Then I have to take care of, you know, got to take care of my family, involved in church, you know, like there's all these other things that also go along with it. Is how can I do the most and still take care of myself and my family? Which is tough for teachers. I know a lot of times there's like, I don't know, I won't get into that, but sorry, I'm getting off topic. But I know it can be tough just getting overwhelmed. Because the people who stay in those type of jobs, it's because they care. It's usually not for the money. It's because they care. And like you were saying, like you saw there were other people around you that you wanted, you saw like maybe they didn't have those same resources or those same opportunities. And now even in your work now, you're helping create more opportunities for people, which is awesome. So I know you mentioned one person, but what really motivated you to get to where you are now?
Oh, that's a whole question. I mean, I think my soul, I'm a striver. I'm like, if there's more, I want to try to be more, you know? And I think what I saw, you know, looking around, I kind of saw, okay, people that have those jobs where they go to the nice offices and they wear the fancy clothes, they went to college. So that's where I want to go. You know, like I'm going to college. Right. And, you know, my mom was a college graduate. My dad was not. They were very supportive. They are both artists. And so they were like, follow your passion, you know, whatever that is. And I was like, what is my passion? My passion is to have a nice life, you know? And so I sort of followed what looked like the path into, you know, the life that people should want. But I think once I was in school and trying different things in college, what I realized was there was something about, I don't want to even say like helping people, because it wasn't necessarily helping people, but it was figuring out the problems that hurt people. Like, what is hurting people? What is keeping people from opportunity? And let me figure out those problems. And so that's what initially got me into social work, because I just sort of thought like the systems that are, you know, people have to integrate with. I'm like, let me make those systems better. How can we make this process better? And getting into child welfare, and what I ended up focusing on was family development. So for families who were caring for kids in foster care, that led to licensing, and that led to child placement. And for me, it was like, we have to make these systems not so harmful to the people that were experiencing them. Like, if you want to care for kids that are in foster care, how can I make this easy, simple, direct, and not harmful? How can I support you while you're doing it? And if you're a kid who ends up in foster care, how can I help you to feel safe and loved? You know? And so that's really, I think, what sort of started my career, and what I continue to pursue is, how do we do this better? You know, I don't think that we're ever going to be in a place where we don't need the child welfare system, right? But I think that the child welfare system can be a better system than what it is now. And I think similarly with education, you know, I'm a huge proponent of education. Like I said, all my work and volunteer work is centered around education. And I don't think that we have reached a point where our education system is where it needs to be when it comes to how supportive it can be for young people. And I think for teachers and for families in general, right? Like, I'm really interested in how we make these spaces of education spaces where anybody that intersects with them feels supported to achieve and to achieve where you want to achieve. Would I like to have everybody be able to achieve an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree or beyond? Sure, but maybe that's not right for everybody. Maybe it's a credential. Maybe it's a trade certificate. I'm not here to judge, and I'm not here to tell you what that should be. I just want you to feel supported and feel like you belong in this system to achieve whatever you want to achieve.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, just when I listen to what you're saying, I keep thinking like, man, if I knew somebody like you when I was going through everything, it would have made everything so much simpler. And like you were saying, like, just how do I support you? How do I simplify this? How do I help support the system and support the people trying to get through the system? It's not an easy thing to do, but I'm glad that you're doing it. If you could do anything to transform the Kalamazoo community, what would it be?
Oh my gosh.
It's a deep one, I know.
Yeah, you know, long ago, there was a local college access network in Kalamazoo that was up and running, and I actually don't know, it might have been resurrected. But long ago, I remember I was engaged in that work, and we were talking about FAFSA, and I remember thinking, you know, if we could make some of these things that we know are critical to getting to the next steps in school, if we could campaign those the way that we do a public health campaign, I think we could get somewhere. And I was like, if we could have everybody, you know, starting October 1st, wearing a "Did you complete your FAFSA" button at the grocery store, the person that checks you out, person at CVS, you know, wherever you're going, if we could sort of public health campaign some of these big things, I think we could start to see an even deeper culture shift around how we support our students and the expectations that we set for the students in our communities. I don't think that it is fair to families, to caregivers, to parents, aunts and uncles, that they are the only people that students are looking to figure out, should I go? How do I go? Where do I go? Is it right for me to go? I think that this is a community model. I think that, like, if we are going to do this right, it is that everybody in the community is like, I care about you going to get some sort of post-secondary credential. What is that going to be? And I think that if we all took up some type of thinking about, like, what's our contribution to that, you know? If I'm going to see the kids in my life, I should be asking them, not, you know, have you thought about college, but like, what's interesting to you? What's your spark? What are you excited about? What gets you, you know, excited to read about, to learn about, to go on YouTube and find more about, you know, to sort of nurture that, like, spirit of continuous learning, right? And I think if I'm out in other spaces, you know, anytime I see somebody that looks like they might be college age, which is getting harder and harder because I am getting older and older.
Right. I'm like, I'm still college age, you know?
Right? And when I see somebody, I'm always like, oh, are you studying anything? Are you pursuing post-secondary? And anytime I hear that they are, I'm like, that's awesome. Good for you. Keep going. I know it can be hard, but, like, it's going to be so worth it, you know? And I'm like, if I can be their cheerleader, even if it's my server at a restaurant, like, that's my role in the community for them, right? So, like, what else can we do from, like, this sort of public health perspective? Like, everybody, it's an all play. Everybody needs to be part of this. So if there's one thing, it would be like this call to action to the community, which I know is like a huge thing. So, you know, maybe one day we'll have buttons that say, did you complete your FAFSA? And everybody wears them, and, you know, everybody knows what FAFSA is, but that would be my dream.
Okay. Yeah, because I didn't know what it was until I think my senior year in high school. I was like, what is that? FAFSA? How do you say that?
Yeah. And it's so critical, right? And like money.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know, I work primarily with young people that have experienced foster care. And even though there's federal funds, there's state funds, there's private funds, they don't necessarily pay for everything, but you have to know that they're there. And so many of them still say, the reason that I'm not going to college is money. Yeah. And it makes me just so crazy because I just go, no, there is money. Right. And let's talk about how we think about money. I don't want you to necessarily get into debt just to get into debt, but there is some kind of debt that may actually pay off if you're leveraging the other resources that you have, you know?
And that's complicated.
It is complicated.
You know, if you came to me and was like, oh, you could get a loan and you could then it transfers to this credential and then it could turn into money once you start working later and you'll make this much more. That's hard to take in as a young person. Like, okay, so I got to go to school longer. I got to do this. And then there's a lot of like, I want instant gratification, like whatever is the quickest way for me to be successful. And if that, like what you're telling me is I got to go do this and there's a long-term payout, it's hard for me to hear that because I have problems right now that I need to solve. Yeah. But it is true because once I got into school and I was using the promise and I was getting the Pell Grant and everything, then it changed things because then I was like, oh, I'm making money to go to school. Yeah. Now this makes sense. So like if it was kind of like pitched or like proposed in that way, then it's like, oh, this actually changes things for me right now. Yeah. So it's a both and where it's changing things for me now and down the road. You're telling me I'll have a career. I have all these different opportunities. I'll meet people, which I didn't know the value of networking. Yeah. Like, but every job I've gotten, like I kind of knew someone sort of, you know, like I was familiar with them who like was in at least one of the people on the interview team. Like I kind of knew, or they like knew of me. Yeah. So that's also your credibility. So if I don't have this like amazing credential yet, or I'm working on it, you also have to know like, oh, I know John's a good worker. I know Maddy will follow through on what she says. Those are the things you don't learn about until like you're actually in the situation and you see it. So no, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, and I think it also speaks to how we build a community of care and belonging. You know, like if you don't feel like you belong in your community, if you don't feel cared for by your community, you're not necessarily going to listen to the people in your community who are saying, you know, you should go to college. And it's like, you can say that all day. But if that young person doesn't feel cared for by you, if they don't feel like you're part of, you know, who they go to for support, then they're not going to listen, and they shouldn't listen, quite honestly. And so, you know, I think we really have to think about how do we not just make the expectation that young people feel cared for and belong in their families, but by this whole Kalamazoo community, right? That they could go anywhere and interact with anybody, and there are people who are going to be championing them because they are from the community. Yeah. You know, I mean, we do that with athletes. It's like some big athlete comes from Kalamazoo and we're all like, oh yeah, we're so behind them. They're so great. How about that's every student who comes from Kalamazoo? That's so great. I want you to achieve. You did this. That's awesome. Yeah. You know, what's the difference? You're absolutely right. I mean, it would be great if we really got behind that. I know I was just talking to my father-in-law about how much parent involvement is such a big thing in student success. And like you said, like if it was the whole community then that also helps with the parent's responsibility.
Yeah.
Because if your parent, the less involved your parents are, the less likely you are to succeed in education. That's just like, I mean, if it's not well known, it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we also have all these other services, all these other supports, then it's also like, well, if they were just in this, if they're involved, if you could just get them here, you know, but that's also difficult. Transportation. Yeah. If I'm working 3 jobs and I can't take my kid to this thing or that interrupts, you know, like there's so many layers to it.
Yeah.
But if we could get a community-wide support system where if your mom has to go to this job and this job doesn't have time to take you to this thing, is there another person, another service that could help you in a different way?
Yeah.
But there's so many ways that you could solve the same problem. And part of this is trying to figure out how do we do that?
Yeah.
But I think, like you said, if it was a community-wide, we're all behind every student that goes through this, it could be possible.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes we don't realize how rich in resources we really are. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, as families have become less intergenerational living, you know, more insular, right? We've forgotten that like some of the richness is by being interdependent, mm-hmm. right? And so, you know, let's think about what it means to be interdependent in a different way. Maybe mm-hmm. it's not just, you know, your family that you're related to, but maybe it's like interdependence within your neighborhood. Mm-hmm. You know, what does that look like if you know, the neighborhood if he can't get somewhere, but I'm free that time, mm-hmm. I'm just hanging around with my dogs, you know? Mm-hmm. Like if I had like a neighbor kid who was like, I really want to go be a part of this after school thing, but my parents work, you know, don't get home until 6:30, I could go step in, right? Yeah. But we don't really have a conversation yet about how to make that possible. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just happens, but I think that there's a way that we could actually sort of be more proactive to say, like, what are the needs of the kids in our community? Yeah. How can we step in and fill in those spaces?
Yeah, it takes a village, like the saying, and then
yes.
if there isn't a village, then if it still takes a village, they don't have a chance,
right?
So, we could talk about that for a long time, but we'll go to the next question. Yeah. If the Kalamazoo Promise was available to you, how would that have changed things for you?
I mean, I said, less debt. Mm-hmm. You know, what I will say is I was really fortunate, like I said earlier, that I had a teacher in high school who saw my potential, who helped me get into a scholarship program that did cover my expenses for undergrad. Mm-hmm. That was huge. That I 100% will say was the reason that I was able to go on and get a master's program or get a master's degree. Mm-hmm. If I had the debt that some of my peers had coming out of undergrad, I don't think that I would have seen that that's possible. And in fact, for some of my friends, you know, when I went on to go to get my master's degree, they were like, you're doing this for us. You know, these are friends that I have from high school. They're like, yeah, we can't go there because we're still trying to pay those bills. Mm-hmm. You're doing this for us. And so when I look at my master's degree and what I'm able to do for it, part of why, you know, I sort of operate in this, like, I'm always trying to think about how I can make connections for other people because I see that degree and what it got me mm-hmm. as on behalf of those who couldn't get that degree because the money held them down so much. Mm-hmm. And so let me take the opportunity that I had because I didn't have those same pressures and do for others with that degree.
It's like you're pouring back into it.
And so I think, you know, if I had the Kalamazoo Promise, it is also that it's more than money. Like the Kalamazoo Promise is more than money. It is that feeling of I have the support from this whole group of people who I may never even meet to go, to persist, to achieve. Mm-hmm. And I think that was one thing that I didn't have. You know, I went to college, I had the money, but I didn't feel like I had anybody from home that was sort of championing me. Mm-hmm. And I think that, it could have shaped the way that I felt, even the self-esteem that I had going into college, like knowing that I had people who were sort of sending me, I think could have been, could have helped me sort of overcome those insecurities that I had. The thing where I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here, and I don't feel like I belong, and let me just put my head down and do this work, and, and just try to shrink myself into one place, because that feels like that's what I'm supposed to be doing here. And maybe not, it took a while for me to really feel like, oh, I belong on this campus. I belong here. And, and even still, it's like, I think the power of the promise is also it connects you back. I didn't go back. Right. I never moved back to my hometown. And, once I moved to Michigan and saw how reasonable housing prices were, that sort of made the decision to go back to Seattle a little bit different. But, I do wonder if I had come from a community that I felt was really investing in me, would I have thought about going back to work in that community?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's something that I think is very unique about the promise, is that they invest in human capital, which I was like, what is that? That's a very strange term, but now I'm like, oh, they're just investing in people.
Yeah.
They actually believe in the people from the community and want them to return, because this is still going to be here for their kids, for more people that they're willing to invest in to build up the city, to transform the city. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know you said a little bit about your favorite things about like Michigan. What are your favorite things about Kalamazoo?
Oh, my favorite things about Kalamazoo.
Yeah.
So I have to say, I do most of my work, oddly enough, outside of the state of Michigan, which is why it's really important for me to do my volunteer work in Michigan and in Kalamazoo. But I talk about Kalamazoo often. Anybody that works with me is like, we know you're from Kalamazoo. Okay, we get it. And I always bring up the promise because I want people to know that something like this is possible. If a community really cared to do it, they could. So I just have to say, I am often talking about the Kalamazoo promise in other spaces because I think that it is so inspirational to people. In addition to that, I think we have great food here. I think that there's and food is very important to me.
What's your favorite restaurant?
Oh, man.
Or one of. You don't have to say your favorite, because then you might make some other place upset. I don't want to make anybody mad. Yeah, but one of your favorites, or a few. You could just shout them out.
Principal has always been the spot that I always return to. Even my friends from out of town will be like, oh, I know, well, they come in to visit me. They're like, we're going to Principal. I'm like, yes, we are. Absolutely going to Principal. I love Latitude. I will tell you, I did not understand beer cheese until I moved to Kalamazoo. And it was like, what? I love cheese. It is another religion to me, is like the doctrine of cheese. What they're doing.
The Gouda book.
Yes. What they're doing with the beer cheese at Latitude, I don't know. I can't. I've tried many a beer cheese. None of it is better. And I have friends that will confirm that. I have friends in Canada that are like, you can't get better beer cheese than Latitude in Kalamazoo. So, that's a big one. Big fans of Brick and Brine. We love them. There's a place, and this is sort of, I guess, stretching outside of just downtown Kalamazoo, but Dog in the Bank is another favorite.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah. We absolutely love their food. So, one of the things that I love about Kalamazoo is, yes, there's the fast food and there's all those places, but there's so many, small restaurants owned by local people, and you see them, you come in, they get to know you, you get to know the servers, they care, and I think that translates to the whole experience of food, and just like how we bring community together around that food, right? So that's a big thing. I also I think that the walkability and the charming way that our downtown mall is. I love it. I love that the Christmas lights stay on till March. I'm here for that. I'm like, personally, bring it on.
Right.
Like, because it's, February, March, and it is hard to get through these winter months here. But you go downtown, you see the lights, you see Bronson Park lights, and you just kind of feel a little bit of like, there's magic. There's a little bit of a glow. And, when I am traveling and I come home and I get to go to those places, it just feels like a little bit of comfort and care. And, I'll joke, I'm like, I don't know, Kalamazoo, downtown Kalamazoo, I think those Hallmark movies like are based off of that, like there's just something quaint and welcoming and inviting. And again, we have great local business owners that I think really have invested in the community, and I try to invest back in them.
That's awesome. No, I resonate with some of the things you're saying. My wife is always like, it's like I'm trying to take the Christmas lights down at New Year's, and she's like, all right, come on, leave those up. But if you had a gold nugget of information you'd want to share with someone who wanted to do the same work as you, what would that be?
Ooh, a gold nugget. I don't know. This is what I often tell to people. I'm like, if you want to be a consultant, find a good accountant. And part of why I say that is because I think that it's important to own what you are expert in and then build strong relationships with people who are expert in other things that you need to sort of thrive in your work, right? I'm not an expert in money. I definitely, I should have taken an accounting class. I never took a single accounting class. But I have a great accountant. He's local, Dan Melnick. I love him. And I think that having somebody who is there to walk alongside me on the financial part and help me make sure that I'm making good decisions, that allows me to focus on the work, to focus on the people.
Yeah, and be an expert in what you're an expert in.
Be an expert in what I'm an expert in, right? And he's an expert in taxes and making sure that I pay all of those so that I am good with the city and the state.
I mean, you're already wearing enough hats. You don't need to put that on too.
Yeah, so that would be my thing.
Okay. How can someone get involved in the work you're doing right now?
Yeah. Reach out to me. I always say my inbox is always open. You can find me at maddyday.com. My email is maddy@maddyday.com, so hopefully it's very easy. And I just would say, whether it's the work that I'm doing or similar work with the populations that I care about, reach out to those organizations. Reach out to the CETA Scholars Program, to folks at Fostering Success Michigan, to folks at the YWCA. Get involved. Even if you only have an hour a month, there is something that you can do with that hour.
Right.
Let them tell you what they need. Don't presuppose what they need. Let them tell you what they need. But, come and say, I want to help. I want to serve. I think that there's a lot of small needs. I think about it, the Kalamazoo DHHS. We often have needs that, in formal structures, we are challenged to meet. And so when donors come in with things like gift cards to Meijer or to Walmart, those are really helpful. And so if there are small ways, or what you think are small ways that you can give, please consider giving, because there's lots of organizations who can do a lot with even a $25 gift card.
Let them spend it the way that they need to.
Yeah.
I like it. Before we get you out of here, do you have any questions for me?
Oh, yeah. I would love to know, as you vision forward with the Kalamazoo Promise, what is on the horizon for you all? What's that next goal or reach that you all want to see accomplished?
That's a big question.
I know.
I don't know if I'm authorized to answer this question. No, I think our biggest thing is just how do we reach those students that don't use the promise, that we're always working on that.
Yeah.
How do we get everyone to use the promise, and also looking at it with an equity lens. I mean, right now, like the promise, it's for everybody that graduates, you know, that's been in K through 12, they get 100%. But how do we address the students that's not enough? Mm-hmm. How do we help those ones? Figuring out what barriers are in the way. I think that's the biggest thing. I know we have Promise Net coming up, which is like where all the different promises that, you know, I don't want to say we were the first, but, you know, all the other ones that came along at some point. Mm-hmm. How do we come together? I'm just biased with the Kalamazoo Promise. It's probably because they gave me money to go to school and now I'm here getting money. But, you know, I appreciate them. But anyway, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we finish?
If I could end with a quote, mm-hmm. I will just end with my life quote. I have it tattooed, which is be a good ancestor. And that's Marian Wright Edelman. And, you know, I thank you for this opportunity to talk, because I really hope that if people are listening to this, they're maybe inspired to think of one way, even if they feel like it's small, that they could take to invest in the young people in our community. And for me, all of that is, how can we be good ancestors? Our time on this earth is finite, but there are hopefully generations to come that will experience something even more than what we have, because we tended the soil, we laid the ground, and they now get to thrive and, you know, plant even deeper seeds because of what we've done.
Wow. I'm going to write that down. I'm over here taking notes. That's deep. Thinking generational. Wow. Okay. I think we can end it there. Thank you so much for being here. Just appreciate the story you had to tell, having people hear it, and just thank you.
Thank you.